Rachel, the season came to an end for the women's tennis team a couple of weekends ago. It was a busy final week. You had a couple of conference matches to close out, and then a non-conference rematch against College of Idaho, and then a match that ultimately didn't count toward the standings, but was a great way for the year to finish for the team and on a positive note. So take us back through that week and how things closed out.
So we started out the week playing Pacific University, who we knew was going to be tough competition for us. And it's always a challenge to make our lineup against Pacific, especially knowing that this year our lineup is more fluid than ever. Pacific has some big talent up top, and then a lot more new players, kind of like us, as we move through the rest of the lineup. And honestly, that match, everything went as well as it could have possibly gone. We really showed up even in the tough spots. We had some great competition. Gracie Smiley and Natalie Budge put up a great fight at the #1 double spot against a nationally ranked team who's really tough. So even in the tough spots where we lost matches, we competed really well and ultimately ended up winning the match 5-4.
And then against Willamette?
Then we saw Willamette, and man, there was a lot of tension as we went into the Willamette match because Willamette historically has been a weaker team, but man, their new coach has been doing a great job, and not only has he brought in some new talent, but they're just better coached than they've been in a long time, and so they competed really well. And we went in knowing that if we wanted to solidify our spot in 5th place for our conference, that we were going to have to pull out the W there, and we did in a big way. We won very decisively in most spots in our match against Willamette, and it was a great way to end our conference season.
You got a rematch against College of Idaho. That was a nice gauge for where things started and where things finished.
Yes.
And what did you learn from that?
It was hard to know exactly on paper where we started versus where we ended, and that our lineup was different. We ended up having to hold out one of our top players in that match because of an injury. And so it was a little bit tough in some respects, but also because we had to hold her out, we ended up putting an entirely different doubles lineup into the atmosphere, and what came back was awesome. We didn't end up ultimately winning the match, but we did compete better in every single spot. My players walked off the court more hungry to get them next year.
In what ways do you feel like this team grew the most over the course of this season?
Experience, honestly, and we knew that at the very beginning of the season. These players are hungry. They have all of the right intangibles, that grit, that hunger, that character to try your best, but you can't always know in what direction to put that effort unless you have the experience under your belt to recognize exactly what each competition calls for, because every time you walk out on the court, there's a different player on the other side of the net, and so we can't have a one-size-fits-all strategy. And this was the year, I think, for the majority of our lineup. As a coach, honestly, I usually have 1 or 2 players who are learning that lesson at a time, and it's fun to see their growth and watch the rest of the team figure it out, and they can look to their more experienced teammates. And this year, it was pretty much our whole roster who was going through that life lesson, and I think it means great things for next year.
Talk more about the outlook for next year in terms of who's coming back, who's coming in,
Yes.
how this team looks to improve.
Well, we're only graduating 1 player, Cara Nelson, which will be a significant loss. She played 3 for us this year in the singles spot and kind of oscillated, primarily spending most of her time in the #2 double spot with Meredith Bedford. So that certainly will be a loss. But because we're such a young team, I believe almost everyone else is coming back, and we're bringing in no fewer than 5 new bucks into our roster this upcoming season, and maybe a couple more even late additions that could be joining us.